So moving along, how does HARP work? Why does it even matter? This is using our planet as a weapon system. Period. It is creating a virtual antenna out of our ionosphere. I don't like it. And our electrojet. We have an auroral and an equatorial electrojet. This is a powerful ring of electricity in the sky. Basically, they are shooting electricity up into it to create a virtual antenna that creates ULF, ELF, and VLF. These are very low frequency, extreme low frequency, ultra low frequency waves. And the reason they do this is because they say they want to be able to talk to satellite or submarines on the bottom of the ocean. And if we want to blow up the entire world with nuclear bombs, well, we got to get in touch with the subs. So this is how you call a submarine for the apocalypse. They've been doing it forever. They had Project Sanguine, back in the day. Why don't we just do that? Since I've got extra time and my throat seems to clear, we'll bring that bad boy up. So you got ELF and BLF transmitters. Let me zoom out and we go over here and check these two crazy big ones. I think this is it right here. Is that it? Yep. And this is the U.S. Navy ELF transmitter at Clam Lake, Wisconsin. You can see it's like a telephone pole. This is the predecessor to HARP. It was actually shut down because activists kept jumping the fences and cutting it down because of something called the Taos hum. Basically, people were hearing hums in their brains. You got to look this history up. It's fascinating. This is the one in Republic, Michigan. But if you go down, what you'll see, and I don't think I have the reference on. Let me turn the reference on so we can see how big this thing is. Come on, don't make me wait. Oh, I don't have them on there. Unfortunate. Anyway, these things are absolutely huge. They go all through the woods. Well, that's the two that were the predecessor to this. And now that's shut down. They use the one over at Cutler, VLF and all. But this is their future plan, big ass antenna in the sky. So they did this along the North Poles because they would shoot directly up into the electrojet, which would allow them to create ELF waves and VLF waves less than 20,000 hertz. And they would get down to as low as like, I think his 50 hertz, was like their main frequency band, but they could get as low as what everybody's seen, the 2.5 hertz tone that was observed during the Fukushima. We will just throw that out. So virtual antenna in the sky, ionospheric current drive. The other one was called polar electrojet heating. That's why all the ionospheric heaters, which I will show you as well, they are all up there around that pole for that very reason, is because that's where the electrojet is. See, there's Tromso, there's HARP, there's High Path. But there's these other ones that are down near the equator that are starting to pop up. And that's because there's an electrojet there as well. And then finally down here near the bottom at G. Camargo, Peru, most of these are following where the electrojet is, especially along the North Pole. Well, they don't have to do it that way anymore. That's why they sold HARP. And everybody argues about this online, but this is the bottom line. The reason why they sold HARP to the University of Alaska, they being the military, is because they don't need it anymore. Now that they don't have to be directly under an electrojet, they can go anywhere in the world and do heating of the ionosphere and create ELF waves. And this is called ionospheric current drive, and it says can be implemented anywhere, anytime. And they're really stoked about it. So what they're actually doing now is heating the F region, which is 300 kilometers high, as you can see in this chart. They're heating the F region, which creates a magnetosonic wave. And this creates a secondary reaction where that magnetosonic wave comes down to the E region, which is 100 kilometers. It's a 200 kilometer gap, all right? So it's shooting up there, it's bouncing down here, and then they're heating the E region, which creates Alvin waves or shear Alvin waves. And these Alvin waves spiral along the magnetic field lines of the Earth and create ELF waves just like they were doing. So it's a secondary antenna. It says right here, magnetosonic driven Hall current. Whoa. So they're making it resonate. And if anybody knows me, what's my middle name? Resonated. they're creating these resonations. They're using our ionosphere as a speaker, as a antenna, and they're lighting it up. And now they can do it anywhere in the world. This is a major breakthrough. So let that be the lesson to all you guys out there who came up with your BS theories on why HAARP of this. It's not closed down. It is closed down. They sold it to the University of Alaska because they don't need it, because they're putting it on boats. And you can see right here, mobile high frequency transmitter, shooting RF up into the F region, just like we just showed you, creating ELF waves, which magnetosonic ELF also, bam, down here to a submarine. Can't make this stuff up. These slides are from Dennis Papadopoulos himself from the University of Maryland. If you're reading about HAARP and you don't know who Dennis Papadopoulos is, you're listening to the wrong people. Predictable and repeatable ELF generation up to 50 hertz on a daily basis. So that's 0 to 50 hertz. Boom. What's it going to look like? They call it the Strawman high frequency array. Oh my God, Strawman. Is this a joke? That's just in your face to all the conspiracy guys out there. Anyway, so what do they want to do? High frequency 8 to 10 megahertz. In order for an ionospheric heater to work, in order to deposit energy into the ionosphere, it must be between 2.8 and 10 megahertz. Period. There may be a new way in the future, but at this point, since HAARP was invented, since before that, 2.8 to 10 megahertz. A 25 watt solid state transmitter and be on a ship, so like a barge. And they would float it around the ocean. It says can provide theater and strategic sub communications, enhance blue-green laser tactical communications by providing info as to transmit and receive locations. So I guess they would put a laser beam on this ship, and that way they could contact the military and say, here's where our ship is currently. And that way it doesn't show up on Jimmy's map because it's hard to find a boat that's moving. Anyway, so that's the truth of the matter. ELF mobile array performance, 800 kilowatt system. And all of this information here, I won't nerd you out, but regardless, here's the brass tacks. This green line is what they call the optimal region for an ELF array. This is where the new mobile boats should be appearing recently. And in fact, right here where it says optimal area, this is exactly where the 8.0 earthquake hit New Zealand the other day. So just a coincidence, but and I did get some photos from people on Facebook saying, hey, there's this thing that looks like HAARP on a boat out in New Zealand. I'll put the photos up later. I'm going to tease you guys for now. But regardless, that's why. It's HAARP on a boat. You can go to climateviewer.com and read it, HAARP on a boat. So more about boats and HAARPs, and let's get even weirder. Noctilucent clouds formed by the breakdown of methane in the circular zone above the HAARP transmitter. This is Malcolm Light and Sam Krana. These are guys from the Arctic Methane Emergency Group, ameg.me. That's their website, ameg.me. Go look it up. These dudes are crazy. They basically say that methane coming out of the Arctic is going to kill everybody on the planet, and it's called the clathrate gun hypothesis. If you guys don't know the science behind it, clathrate is a methane hydrate. It is a frozen piece of methane ice. And the reason why this is even a thing is because they drilled in the ice in the Arctic, and in the ice core, they saw that dinosaur farts had made a lot of CO2. And then right after the dinosaur farts, they saw a lot of methane. So the theory goes, dinosaur farts melted the ice methane, which then released into the atmosphere and killed all the dinosaurs. So dinosaurs farted themselves to death. You cannot make this up. And it's called runaway global warming. This clathrate gun hypothesis, which is based on this dinosaur fart theory. Yeah, that's a real thing. It really happened. So, and AMEG believes this so much that they said, well, we could do Project Lucy, which we would use HAARP to take that methane that's going into the air and compress it with radio waves into diamond dust, because chemically, atomically, methane and diamonds are very similar. And what they're saying is that if they use a 10 and a 23.56 megahertz frequency, and they point them at the same plume of gas coming up, that would basically make a 13.5 megahertz tone. And this 13.5 megahertz frequency would compress methane into diamond dust. And this diamond dust would make noctilucent clouds. These are very high clouds in the atmosphere. And they would block sunlight. And if they block sunlight, they could cool the planet. And that's geoengineering, homie. So this is called Project Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. And it is AMEG saying, hey, use HAARP, quote, the transmitters can be mounted on submarines, planes, and after 2015 on boats and drilling rigs when the Arctic ice cap has melted. Oh, God. That was written in 2012. I mean, they're eating crow today. It did not melt. It's not even close. It's actually at a record thickness, but whatever. So they thought that by 2015 there'd be no ice, and they'd be up there with multiple HAARP beams on boats and drilling rigs and planes and, all that insanity. But we all know, don't cross the streams. That's a bad idea. So this brings us to the end of we're nearing the end. Geoengineering, AKA climate engineering, AKA climate intervention. So it started out as geoengineering. Then everybody was like, hey, it's not really geo. We're actually doing the air. Geo is the earth. Excuse me. And now we're going to call it climate engineering. A great example of that, they have this thing called the DC Geoengineering Consortium. Dr. Will Burns, PhD from American EDU, stole my geoengineering timeline and put it on Dippity.com. Then went over on Ken Calderas forum, was bragging on himself. Look at my geoengineering timeline. I'm like, dude, you stole my photos. You stole my entries. Shame on you. DC Geoengineering Consortium. They renamed themselves to the Forum for Climate Engineering Assessment, FCEA. And then the CIA came along and the National Academy of Sciences said, wait, engineering is a bad thing in the public's perception. Let's call it climate intervention. Like the earth is a freaking coke addict and they have to save it from itself. It's just, anyway, that's framing, that's perception management, that is mind control. We're going to call it geoengineering. So terminology is, the name of the game in this stuff. So you see the little diagram down here. This is what we're talking about. I don't focus on, painting rooftops or, sequestering CO2. You want to pump CO2 in the ground and cause an earthquake, go right ahead. Go look at fracking and ask them how it's working out for them over there in Oklahoma. I'm focused mainly on this idea of putting aerosols into the air to block sunlight. I think that it's the worst idea I've ever heard, and the people that are pushing it are dangerous. So that's why I do what I do in regards to geoengineering. Terminology like solar radiation management, stratospheric aerosol injection, and marine cloud brightening are the main topics du jour. Of course, solar radiation management, now they want to call it albedo modification instead. They're always coming up with a new term for the same thing. So terminology is kind of crazy and all over the place. They'll come up with things like climate intervention, climate engineering, climate modification, ecological alteration, albedo modification, albedo enhancement. There's just every 5 days they come up with a new term for the same thing, just so that I think that they do it just so that you can't find it on Google. But regardless, this is a Google Scholar result, and we see that the main two categories to this day, most scientists agree, geoengineering and weather modification are the topic or the most agreeable terminology for this thing. And they try to divide them up because one is for climate and one's for weather. But what you end up realizing is that if you try to modify the climate, you will modify the weather. And that's a very important point. So where does this all come